Excuse me while I give my tablet a little bit of more height so I can look at you rather than down. And while I'm doing that, I'll fill the gap with this. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, John the Baptist. Happy birthday to you. He's finally lost it. He's almost now singing happy birthday to John the Baptist. And not only that, I'm even going to toast him. So to John the Baptist for preparing the way for Jesus. And perhaps this is a timely reminder that it's nearly 6 months to Christmas. Although personally, I'm not sure whether that's worth toasting, but there we go. Cheers. I promise this is water. So why am I making a fuss about the birth of John the Baptist? Why is the church making a fuss about the birth of John the Baptist? Well, a birth is rather unusual when we come to Saints' Days. John the Baptist is one of only 2 saints whose birth we mark with a special day in the Christian calendar. The other one is the Blessed Virgin Mary, whose birth we remember in September. In about 6 weeks' time, in August, we also commemorate the death of John the Baptist. And for the death, when we remember martyrs, saints who are martyred, that's when the priest wears a red vestment. But because it's the birth, it's a white vestment today. And also to keep liturgical geeks like me happy. When we mark a death, we tend to see it as an ending. We sum up all that the person's life has held. The marking of a birth, however, is very much about new beginnings. We talk about potential and promise. What will this child become? Was the question on the hills of Judea when the news of the birth of John the Baptist spread. In a biography, I like looking at the photos. I tend to be drawn to the photographs of the person in childhood, perhaps. We might think to ourselves, what might this child become? Could they have ended up being something different? Could something have happened to hinder their bright promise or their flaws made good? Perhaps our interests are not just a biography, but rather an autobiography. As Christians, we strive to be like Jesus and to let Jesus' biography shape our lives. So how will marking the birth of John the Baptist help us? As the story of the birth of John the Baptist that we heard in our gospel reading gathers up all those Old Testament themes, we see that God takes history seriously and takes us seriously as people in history. People whose present has been brought to birth out of the past, made possible by deeds done long ago, and people who will conceive the future of those who come after us. When a child is born, the family may see huge possibilities in their bundle of joy. Gradually, that cloud of promise begins to develop, and certain possibilities narrow or even disappear. As each year that passes, see roads not taken, achievements reached, and mistakes made. One reason that we keep birthdays is to reflect. And our birthdays are annual opportunities to add up the score, if you like. 12 months on, who am I? What has made me the person I am now? What has my life added up to so far? What promises to come? What might the future hold? And I have to say, 12 months ago, if I thought I'd be here preaching a sermon about the birth of John the Baptist, I probably wouldn't have believed you. As we hopefully come out of lockdown, it seems a good and necessary time to ask those birthday questions about ourselves, the people of God in this place, about our past, about who we are now, and about the promise of our future. In our first reading from the Acts of the Apostles, we heard the synagogue officials ask Paul and his companions if they have any thoughts or as it said in the reading, words of exhortation, which sounds much better than thoughts, doesn't it? Words of exhortation to share. What if we, as Christians, ever get asked about our words of exhortation about St. Faith's? I guess we probably wouldn't be able to give the précis of the Old Testament that Paul gave in our first reading, complete with a gesture before he started. I do wonder what the gesture was, whether it was a do I have to say all this again? Or perhaps a finger. Don't know, discuss. But anyway, how could we answer that question? Perhaps we could use the birthday questions to help us. We could explain what work has happened here that we can celebrate and build upon. We could also talk about who we are. We heard in Paul's exhortation that John the Baptist turns round the question on people's lips when he was born, "What will this child become?" and asks, "What do you suppose that I am?" John the Baptist makes it clear that it isn't all about him, but the one who comes after him. We could also talk about who we might become, what potential or promise there is here in heaven. Paul exhorted that John the Baptist called a whole nation to a new start in the waters of baptism. We have a font here in church, but what other signs are there that we share God's longings for our world to be cleansed and refreshed? As we've been reading for the last few weeks in the Corona Chronicle, we're rightly proud here at St. Faith's of our Bronze Eco Church Award, a small sign about caring for God's earth. But how keen are we as a church that we get the silver or even gold? That's just one example, suggested by John's message of repentance and justice. I'm sure that you can think of many more. What will this child become? Was the question on the hills of Judea when the news of the birth of John the Baptist spread. As a newer worshipper, here in church or online at St. Faith's, you may identify with this potential and promise. Or you may think that you and St. Faith's have been around for too long to hear new ideas or diocesan plans or deanery plans or all this new beginnings nonsense. But in our gospel reading, St. Luke clearly tells us that Elizabeth's friends and relatives rejoiced with her, who became a mother at a great age. God showed his mercy to Elizabeth and shows us that God's great mercy over a long history and passage of years are no bar to new birth. So when you're having your liquid lunches a little bit later after this service, don't forget to raise a glass to the birth of John the Baptist, and perhaps raise a second glass as well to new beginnings. Cheers.